Hello children, we are discussing the chapter 4, materials, metals and non-metals. In the initial phases of this chapter, we studied what is matter. Anything which occupies a space and has a certain mass is known as matter. This marker, this occupies a space over my hand and it has a mass with it, that is matter. When you buy the packet of chips or Lays, that is completely inflated, that has air in it. If you measure it and then deflate it and then measure it, पहले बच्चों उसको फूले हुए को measure करो और उसके बाद उसे पिचका कर, we'll observe that there is a difference in the masses. That means air also has a mass. Air occupies the space in that packet. So air is also a matter. Then differentiation of matter. We differentiate the matter on the basis of particles. If the matter is made up of single type of particles, that is known as pure substances. And if there are more than one type of particles are present in matter, that is known as mixtures. Pure substances are further classified into two forms, elements and compounds. And in this chapter, we'll discuss about the elements. Elements are the substances which cannot be split up into the simpler substances by simple or by usual chemical methods like heating, by passing electricity or by applying light. Those are referred as elements. Elements are further classified into three forms, metals, non-metals and the metalloids. Then we discuss a very important topic, that is the physical properties difference between the metals and non-metals. The difference between the non-metals and metals on the basis of their physical properties, like malleability. Metals are malleable, that is they can convert it into thin sheets, whereas non-metals are non-malleable. Next, ductility. Metals are ductile, that is they can convert into thin and long wires, whereas non-metals are brittle. They break down into powdered form, broken down into smaller pieces when they are hammered. Except sodium and potassium. Sodium and potassium are the two metals which are neither malleable nor ductile. Next, metals are good conductors of heat as well as good conductors of electricity, whereas non-metals are poor conductors of heat and poor conductors of electricity. Here also two very important exceptions are there. A metal which is a poor conductor of heat, एक ऐसा metal जो metal है उसके बावजूद heat conduct नहीं करता, and that is lead, bismuth. Lead और bismuth ऐसे दो metals हैं बच्चे which are poor conductors of heat. Along with that, mercury also. Mercury is also a metal which is a poor conductor of heat. Next, graphite is the only non-metal which is a good conductor of electricity. That is the only reason why graphite is used to make dry cells. Next, which is sonority. Metals are sonorous in nature, non-metals are non-sonorous in nature. What is sonority? Whensoever we hit hard an object, an element, then it produces a ringing sound, that is known as sonority. And metals produce a ringing sound, whereas non-metals do not produce any ringing sound. Next, metals have high density. What is density? Mass covered or occupied per unit volume by a substance is known as density. Metals have high density except sodium and potassium. These are the two metals which have low density, whereas non-metals have usually low density. Next, melting point and boiling point. Metals are hard. They have a very high tensile strength. So metals melting point and boiling point is high, except cesium and gallium. Cesium is a metal which melts in our palm. Cesium एक ऐसा metal है जो हमारी palm में ही melt हो जाता है. Next, non-metals have low melting point and boiling point. Why? Because non-metals are usually soft in nature. They are not very hard. They have very low tensile strength. So they break very easily. That's why they melt and boil at very low temperatures. So that is the physical property difference which we have discussed already in our previous videos, bache. Now we are discussing the chemical properties of metals and non-metals, or you can say difference between metals and non-metals on the basis of chemical properties. The first one which we have discussed already, the reaction of metals and non-metals with air. Air means oxygen. When metals react with oxygen gas, they form metallic oxides, which are basic in nature. Metallic oxides are basic in nature, bache. They convert red litmus to blue. They convert the colorless phenolphthalein to pink. Whereas when non-metals react with oxygen, they form non-metallic oxides. And non-metallic oxides are either acidic or neutral in nature. Now we'll discuss certain examples. First one is sodium. When sodium metal reacts with oxygen gas, it will form sodium oxide. This is sodium oxide, Na2O. When calcium in the solid form reacts with oxygen gas, then it will form calcium oxide, which is a basic oxide, bache. So metals forms the oxide which are basic in nature. Aluminium reacts with oxygen gas to form aluminium oxide, which is basic in nature. Whereas when non-metals like carbon reacts with sufficient oxygen, that it will form carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is an acidic oxide. It forms acids when it mixed with water. Sulfur, when reacts with oxygen, form SO2, sulfur dioxide, the pollutant which is released by the burning of petrol and diesel. Nitrogen, when reacts with oxygen, either form NO2 or sometimes it will form N2O, dinitrogen oxide. NO2 is acidic in nature, nitrogen dioxide, and this one is dinitrogen oxide is neutral in nature. So non-metals react with oxygen to form non-metallic oxides which may be acidic or neutral in nature. So these are the reactions between the metals with oxygen and non-metals with oxygen. That is the difference also. When metals react with oxygen, they form metallic oxides. When non-metal reacts with oxygen, they form non-metallic oxides. Metallic oxides are basic in nature, whereas non-metallic oxides are either acidic or neutral in nature. Now we will discuss the reaction of metals and non-metals with water. First we'll discuss with metals, bache. Metal reacts with water in the two forms of it. First, metal reacts with water in liquid state to form metal hydroxides along with the release of hydrogen gas. Also, metal reacts with the gaseous form of water, that is known as steam. When the water vapors are passed through a channel, passed through a duct at high pressure, that is known as steam. भाप बोलते हैं इसको हिंदी में. Steam means water vapors at high pressure. Then, instead of metal hydroxides, metal oxides are formed along with the hydrogen gas. So in both the cases, hydrogen gas is produced, bache, which produce effervescence. Effervescence means bubbling. As hydrogen is lighter in weight, it rises upwards. So we'll discuss certain examples, bache. First one, with cold water. There's a difference as well. Some metals react with cold water, some reacts with hot water, some neither react with cold and hot water, and some will only react with steam. So first we'll discuss the reaction of metals with cold water. Sodium and potassium reacts with water, with the cold water, and form sodium hydroxide along with the release of hydrogen gas H2. So sodium can easily react with water, with the cold water at room temperature, and it will form sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. This reaction is highly exothermic. What do you mean by exothermic? The reactions in which heat is evolved or released out, those reactions are known as exothermic reactions. In this reaction, when sodium reacts with the cold water at room temperature, then it will form sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas is produced. Plus, heat is generated. Due to that heat, hydrogen will start to burn, and hydrogen burns with a pop-up sound. बच्चे जब ये हीट निकलेगी, हाइड्रोजन गैस बर्न होने लगेगी, हाइड्रोजन गैस जलने लगेगी, and when hydrogen gas burns, it produces pop-up sound. As sodium is a very reactive metal, the rate of reaction is quite high. So those small pop-up sounds will heard as a large explosion. तो आपसे बच्चों पूछ सकते हैं कि जब हम सोडियम और पोटेशियम, when we add sodium or potassium to water, it produces an explosion. एक explosion एक धमाका सुनाई देता है. क्यों? Because बच्चे, when sodium reacts with water, it will form sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas along with the release of heat. In the presence of that heat, hydrogen will start to burn, and when hydrogen burns, it produces pop-up sound. And that pop-up sound will heard as a large explosion, because the rate of this reaction, speed of this reaction is quite rapid, quite fast. Likewise, potassium also reacts with cold water to form potassium hydroxide plus hydrogen gas, and heat is evolved. These two reactions are violent reactions. Hinsaत्मक है. Why? Because they generate a large explosion. When sodium and potassium reacts with cold water, hydrogen gas is released along with heat. Due to that heat, hydrogen will start to burn, and when hydrogen burns, it produces a pop-up sound. Those pop-up sounds will heard as a large explosion due to fast rate of this reaction. Second, calcium also reacts with cold water. That is H2. It will form calcium hydroxide, CaOH whole twice, plus hydrogen gas. But the amount of heat produced in this reaction is very less. Likewise, magnesium also reacts with water, with cold water, with liquid water, to form magnesium hydroxide plus hydrogen gas. The rate of reaction is not fast as that of sodium and potassium. रिएक्शन तो बच्चे तेजी से हो रही है, बट इन दोनों के मुकाबले स्लो है. सो हाइड्रोजन गैस डज नॉट स्टार्ट टू बर्न. हाइड्रोजन गैस बर्न होना स्टार्ट नहीं होती. इफ हाइड्रोजन डज नॉट बर्न, इट डज नॉट प्रोड्यूस पॉपअप साउंड. बच्चे अगर हाइड्रोजन बर्न ही नहीं होगी तो पॉपअप साउंड प्रोड्यूस नहीं होगा. बट आफ्टर सम टाइम calcium and magnesium in this reaction will start to float over the reaction mixture. It's a very important question. It's a very important extra question. Why, when magnesium reacts with water, after some time these two will start to float over the water. कुछ समय बाद वो float करने लगते हैं surface पर. Why? Because बच्चे, the hydrogen gas which is produced in this reaction will get stick to the surface of calcium and magnesium. जो हाइड्रोजन गैस प्रोड्यूस हो रही है वो कैल्शियम और मैग्नीशियम के सरफेस पर जाकर चिपक जाती है. And whenever gas is joined to the surface of our substance, it makes it lighter. वो उसे क्या बना देती है? लाइट. इसका एग्जांपल है बच्चे, whenever we start to train for swimming, we use a tire-like object around our body, which does not allow us to sink in. हम बच्चे टायर जैसा एक होता है सेफ्टी गार्ड, वो हम पहन कर या उसको अपने बॉडी के अराउंड रैप करके फिर कूदते हैं. वो बच्चे हमें हल्का बना कर रखता है, उससे हम डूबते नहीं. Likewise, this hydrogen will stick to the surface of the calcium and magnesium, makes it lighter, and due to which that calcium and magnesium will start to float on the water surface. Next we'll discuss the reaction of metals with steam. Aluminium, zinc and iron do not react with cold water or hot water. They only react with steam, and whensoever they react with steam, that is the gaseous form of water, they form their oxides along with the release of hydrogen gas. जब बच्चों एल्यूमिनियम, जिंक और आयरन स्टीम से रिएक्ट करते हैं, they will form their respective oxides. Aluminium will form aluminium oxide, zinc will form zinc oxide, and iron will form iron oxide, that is ferroferric oxide, Fe3O4. So that is the reactions of aluminium, zinc and iron with steam, as these three do not react with the cold water as well as with the hot water. Next thing बच्चे, copper, mercury, silver, gold, platinum, they do not react with water, as they are less reactive than hydrogen. So copper, mercury, silver, gold, platinum, these are the metals that do not react with water, either in the form of liquid water or either in the form of steam. Along with that बच्चे, when sodium reacts with steam, it will form sodium oxide and hydrogen gas is produced. These metals react with sodium and potassium, react with the cold water as well, with the liquid form of water as well, and with the steam as well. But what is the difference? When they react with the liquid water, they form hydroxides, sodium and potassium only. And when they react with steam, they form oxides, sodium oxide and potassium oxide respectively. In both the cases, whether they react with the liquid or steam, they release hydrogen gas. And hydrogen gas burns with a pop-up sound. कैसे पहचान करें वो निकल रही है? उसके पास एक बर्निंग फ्लेम ले जाओ तो वो पॉपअप साउंड के साथ बर्न होने लगती है. तो बच्चे, this is the reaction of metals with water. Next, non-metals. Non-metals do not react with water. metals react with water to form metal hydroxide or oxides along with the release of hydrogen gas, whereas non-metals do not react with water. Non-metals water से react नहीं करते.